Hey guys, Joe from the Crazy New York Driver Show. Friday night, March 14th, 2014. I'm starting this video really late. 6:33 p.m. is when I'm starting it. Who knows when I'll get it uploaded. Today we're going to talk about something that has been buzzing through the eBay community for the last couple of days. New seller standards, build your business with great service, aka the eBay Spring Seller Newsletter. There are a ton of changes and we're going to discuss them all today. I would like to firstly cite my source materials, where I got my information from, so you can understand that it's all valid. Number one, some of it is from the eBay newsletter itself. Some of it has come from a webinar that I attended yesterday. Some of it is from my good friend Cindy. I'll tell you a little bit more about her later. And lastly, another shout out to an eBay worker, a nice lady, a nice eBay representative named Christine. I had the pleasure of speaking with her today, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some of the things she was gracious enough to explain to me. She is not somebody from customer service per se. She is a person that's higher up in the field and was very, very kind to take an hour out of her time to talk to me on the phone and to explain these changes to me, and I am going to relate them to you now. So I know there's a lot of misinformation going on out there right now. Alright, I heard some misinformation myself on the webinar last night, and we're going to correct it right now. Before we start, last week's video. I always do a really little rehash about last week's video. The only thing I really have time to say right now is 99% of you good people want the blocked bidder list to stay in place. I agree with you 100%. It's a valuable tool and we need eBay to keep the blocked bidder list. Thank you for your comments on last week's video. Sorry, I really can't get into it anymore, but I just have way too much to do now. Alright, the first misnomer that's going around is that eBay is doing away with the DSR console. That is not true. The console will remain. What is changing is eBay is no longer counting the stars for communication and shipping cost against you. So those are 2 stars you don't have to worry about anymore. Okay? The rest of them, well, we'll get to them in a second. With respect to the webinar, let's start with that first. I know most of you guys didn't watch it. It was on yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It was run by Jonathan Haney and Brian Burke. And they discussed several things. Some of the things are a rehash, like eBay is really ramping up their mobile app. And I'm not opposed to that, but the problem I've told you guys before is most of the people who have an issue are people who are using the mobile app. For some reason, the eBay mobile app does not always display all the auctions in their entirety, and that's a problem that eBay is working on. It's a bug, it's a known bug, and hopefully they will be able to rectify that. Now, let's talk about the big changes. Number one, something called the holiday returns option, aka extended holiday returns. Basically, this is optional. You do not have to opt into this. However, if you're a top-rated seller like myself and you get the 20% discount, you will only get the 20% discount if you opt in. You don't have to opt in, and you can keep your TRS status. However, you will not get the 20% discount. And to me, that is what being a TRS is about, is that 20% discount. So I will be opting in. And here's how it works. During the period November 1st to January 31st, all people opting in must accept returns for that inclusive 90-day period. For example, If you opt in and you sell an item on November the 1st, a month goes by, it's December 1st, you think everything's cool. It might not be. January 1st comes, that's another month, and then January 31st, yet another 30 days. You have to give the buyers 3 months with which to return your item. No questions asked. All right? Again, you don't have to get into this, but if you're a top-rated seller and you want to keep your 20% discount, then you have to. I myself will be opting into that. Truthfully, I know some people are going to be upset with this. It doesn't really bother me because, in the field of what I sell, even if somebody returns something 2 months later, it's not going to go bad, it's not going to go stale, so I'm really not concerned about that. I'd like to move on to something else that eBay has coined, a new term called the defect rate. The defect rate is basically what they are now calling the old DSR console 1-star rating and bad rating and all that stuff. Let me give you a list of everything that falls under the defect rate. The first thing, if you get a 1, 2, or 3 in the item as described rating, that counts as a defect. Next, if you get a negative or a neutral feedback, either one, that counts as a defect. And the reason eBay gives for counting neutrals as defect is because they say when a buyer leaves a neutral, he spends less on eBay in the future. This isn't me talking, this is eBay, I'm reporting. Another reason for a defect is a return for a SNAD, significantly not as described. Another defect, a 1-star for shipping time. Another defect, an eBay money-back guarantee or PayPal protection case opened for SNAD. And lastly, a seller canceled transaction will result in you getting a defect. And let me explain what a seller canceled transaction is to clarify this. There are some sellers, not me of course, that sell items they don't have, items that are not in stock. Consequently, a bidder will do a buy it now, pay the seller, think they're getting the item, and then the seller will be unable to furnish the item. And he'll refund the money to the bidder, and the bidder, who thought that he was done, he thought that his shopping was over, now he's got to shop somewhere else, and sometimes it's not on eBay. Sometimes he goes over to the A place. You know where I mean. So I can definitely understand eBay requiring sellers to have their merchandise in stock. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Now, eBay says there are some safeguards built in to protect the sellers. Let's go over them now. Number 1, each transaction counts only once, no matter how many defects you have. For instance, if you sell an item and your buyer gets the item and leaves you a negative feedback, an item is described rating of 1, and returns the item with a SNAD complaint, technically that's 3 defects. However, eBay will only count it as 1. This way, no one buyer can totally dick you over. All right? So that's understandable. Next, your defect rate does not kick in until you reach a certain amount. And that amount is 8 defects if you're a regular ham and egg seller, or 5 defects if you're a top-rated seller. Now, I mentioned Cindy earlier, and I'm going to break with tradition right now, and I'm going to read directly from my laptop something Cindy wrote. Please bear with me. This is important. She put a lot of time in this research, and I want to read it to you. The parameters set with the new rule of 5 for ETRS and 8 for other sellers is to protect small sellers from being kicked off eBay 1, 2, 3, or 4 buyers. This is huge. You need 5 or 8 unique buyers to lose your status. You could fall below 2% defect rate, but the 5 or 8 rule is taken into account and you won't lose it without both occurring. Which means, let's say you're under the 12-month review, all right? As long as you don't get, if you're a top-rated seller, as long as you don't get 5 defects within that period, you're fine. Once you do get the 5, then the defect rate kicks in, all right? We'll talk about how you may get defects undeservedly shortly. Cindy also writes, percentages versus number of cases. It is 2% of your evaluation period and the 5/8 rule combined. So if you're a medium seller, like I consider myself, and I have 1,500 transactions in my 3-month evaluation period, I need to have 30 defects to lose top rated 2% of 1,500. If I have 30 defects, I should not be a top-rated seller in my opinion. For those with 12-month evaluation, you need to have under 2% for ETRS, but keep in mind, it has to be from 5 buyers. So say you sold 100 items and got 4 defects. You would be at 4%, but you only had 4 unique buyers and you would not lose your ETRS status. Capiche? Okay, as I said guys, this has been a very tedious video to research and make, so Cindy was good enough to do some of the research for me, as was a few others who jumped in on this one, and I thank them immensely. Let's do a timeline now of when all these new changes are going to take place. Firstly, we have April 16th. April 16th is when eBay gives us all a preview as to how we will be rated once this new system kicks in. For instance, do any of you guys want to know what your defect rate is right now? If you do, I'll tell you how to find out. If you call eBay customer service, I do believe they will tell you your defect rate right now and explain it to you. But keep in mind, no matter what your defect rate is now, it will not hurt you because the new criteria hasn't kicked in yet. I know what my defect rate is because Christine was nice enough to tell me when she called me. She said my account is in great shape. She was really nice. She said that I'm doing everything just like I should. I'm a good top-rated seller. My defect rate, if it kicked in right now for 12 months, is 0.85%, which is less than half. Okay? She says, excellent. She says, as long as I keep this up, I don't see any problems. If I can do it, you can do it. Please don't worry about things unnecessarily. There's one thing that is of concern. I'll get to that shortly. The next item on the calendar is May the 1st. The new rules kick in, meaning what that means is starting your sales on May 1st, you will be rated for any defects you receive. August 20th. That's the first evaluation from the period May 1st to August 20th. In other words, we get report cards on August 20th, and we'll find out how we did. And based on that, September the 1st, that'll be the first billing invoice from eBay to reflect what has just transpired. Capiche? Okay, now let's talk about the positive and the negative aspects. Positive. As Cindy said earlier, the threshold is higher. In other words, it will be mathematically harder to lose your TRS status. Secondly, you no longer have to have 98% feedback to be a top-rated seller. But quite frankly, guys, I don't run into many top-rated sellers that have less than 98 or even less than 99. So I'm not quite sure why they did that. Now here's an interesting point, and it's a positive. A lot of you good people complain every week how you make sales, your buyers are happy, but they never leave you positive feedback. Well, eBay has finally listened to that particular gripe. eBay says that in their opinion, no feedback equals a successful transaction. So what I'm saying is, let's say you sell 100 items. Let's say 10 of your customers, not 10, let's say 50% of your people leave you positive feedback. All right? 1 leaves you negative feedback. What happened to the other 49? Well, eBay will look at them as transactions that were completed in a positive manner. So when you come up for evaluation, they will be looked at in kind, which is good news. As far as your defects are concerned, you know how the old DSR console was anonymous? You had no idea who star banged you? Well, I'm told that when you receive a defect, you will receive it immediately. For instance, if somebody gets your item on Wednesday and they don't like it and they nail you with a defect, you will know that it came in on Wednesday. All right? So hopefully you'll be able to research it and figure what you did wrong, if anything. Now, no new programs are 100%. And guys, there's one huge, absolutely huge flaw in my opinion. Returns. Now listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you, because I'm going to explain this using myself as an example. This is big. All right. You know how many times I'll complain about a person who will buy one hubcap, pay me for it, I'll ship it out to them, and then he says, "Oh, Joe, I thought I was getting 4. I want to make a return." Well, returns are going to be a problem. Let me explain why. Last week, I sold a hubcap to a customer. $50. He paid for it. Immediately contacts me and opens a SNAD case against me last week. A SNAD case. Significantly not as described, because I sent him one hubcap and he only paid for one. But, in the description box where he types his comments, he admitted he screwed up. He said, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I thought I was getting 4. I've never had this problem before. Will you accept a return?" Now, of course, I do accept returns, 14 days, no questions asked. I said to him, "Sure thing, no problem. Send the item back and get me the tracking number." So he sends it right back to me, gives me the tracking number. The item comes, no sweat. I go onto my PayPal account and I refund the guy the full $50. I did not even take out the 10% restocking fee. Within seconds of giving the man a refund, I get a letter from eBay saying, "Thank you for refunding your buyer. The case is now closed and it will not count against you." Just the way it should be. Perfect. Now let's look what's going to happen after the new rules kick in. The buyer buys one item, thinks he's getting 4. He gets the item and realizes he screwed up. If he opens a case against me, I get an automatic defect. Period. No questions asked. Even if I say to the guy, "I will take it back, please send it back." And even if the guy says to me, "Joe, I screwed up and I didn't read your auction." Well, that's too bad. eBay's given me a defect. And you too. Weird, right? However, let's say the same bidder gets the item and contacts me through eBay contact system without clicking on one of those little, those little buttons that accidentally open a case, accidentally on purpose. Well, if he contacts me directly and says, "Joe, I thought I was getting all 4. Will you take a return?" That's different. That's acceptable and I will not be penalized. All right? What I would have to do in that case is I would have to initiate a canceled transaction thing similar to what we do now, and I would have to choose the correct drop-down message from what they call the eBay flow. And I believe the message would say, buyer request cancellation. As long as the buyer requests it, you are in the clear. But if he opens a case against you, you cannot win. I mean it. That's the only thing that really has me very upset. I was up late last night talking to my friends with the Facebook groups, and it seems each person has a different pet peeve. Like Cindy was big on the shipping time, because she ships across country just like I do. And a lot of her boxes don't get there within a particular time frame. And eBay's parameters for things to get from, let's say, New York to California are just not always realistic. And as I spoke to Christine earlier, she said eBay is going to probably remedy that and take that into account and maybe do some adjustments there. But that, again, is not my main worry. That was Cindy's main worry. And she seems to be okay with it now. They've allayed her fears. But this business with the automatic cases counting against us, that's weird. That's real weird. Because it just doesn't seem right to me. And I'm being honest. You know, I like to cheer and I like to tell people to sell on eBay because I love selling on eBay. I make money here. All right? And I want you guys to keep selling on eBay. But you've got to be protected. All right? How can you get around this? What I'm thinking of doing is something that I used to look down on in the past. But like I always say, you have to change. You have to be malleable. You have to be willing to adjust. I've always been down on people contacting me directly here at work because I lose the protection of the eBay contact system. All right? However, what I'm thinking of doing is sending a form letter to each customer saying something like this. Dear Mr. Smith, thank you for buying my item on eBay. And then I'll list the item, like 1995 Cadillac hubcap. I hope it meets with your expectation. If you are happy with the item, would you please leave me positive feedback, as it will show potential customers that I really care about my customers. If through any chance you have any problem, if you bought the wrong size or if it's the wrong style or whatever, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I would have my store address and phone number. And you know they love to contact me directly anyway if they're unhappy. So actually it would benefit us if they did contact us directly, because they wouldn't be clicking on that open the case button and there would be no defect. And that's just something I'm going to throw out there, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. And it is not in violation of any eBay rules whatsoever, because the sale's being done on eBay. I've already checked into this and I verified it. Like I said when I started this video, any information you're getting now has been checked and verified. There was one mistake on the webinar I want to talk about. I picked up on it, and so did a few friends of mine. And here's the mistake. Did any of you watch that webinar by any chance? Well, what happened is somebody posed this question. Suppose a person makes a purchase from a seller, gets the item, and opens a snag case. The seller says, I'm sticking to my guns, I'm not giving you the money back, and they escalate it to eBay. eBay looks at the case and sides with the seller. Now on the webinar, it was said that even if the seller wins and eBay sides with the seller would still receive a defect because the case was open. This caused a lot of turmoil last night in the Facebook groups, because it so happens Griff, who runs eBay Radio, had done an eBay Radio show about this yesterday or the day prior that I didn't catch because I didn't know it was going to be on, and he said there would be no defect given. So we had this long thread going of opposing viewpoints. Griff was saying there was no defect going to be given? And I said to him, Griff, I said, I totally understand where you're coming from, but please listen to me. I know what I heard on the webinar with Jonathan Haney. They said there would, in fact, be a defect given. While I was chatting with him, two women came in who I know, two nice ladies, and they heard the same thing I heard. All right? So what I'm saying is that webinar is now up. I'm not sure if they're going to edit it out and correct it or what, but I have checked with Christine, who's high on the eBay ladder, and she has assured me, as Griff did, should a case get escalated to eBay and eBay sides with the seller, there will be no defect given. All right? That's very important. No defect will be given. Next, hassle-free returns. eBay is very big on people opting into hassle-free returns, but I don't recommend it for one reason. And it's very important. If you're a seller and you opt into hassle-free returns and a person chooses to return something, you will be given an automatic defect. Now, how is that different than not accepting the hassle-free returns? Without being in the hassle-free returns, the buyer can communicate with you one-on-one. I'm not saying he will, but I'm saying he can, like they do with me sometime, you know? But once they click that button, return item not as described, goodbye, it's defect. So my advice to you guys, if you're not opted into hassle-free returns, do not opt in at this point. Wait and let's see if they fine-tune this a little bit. Okay? I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying that I think they should, and I think quite a few of you guys will think they should too. Let me see if I have any more new points. Oh yes, they gave a little list of tips here in the webinar. Let me just read these really quick. I know this is a long video, but it is really important, and I waited 2 days to put this out. Actually, guys, I'll be honest with you. I actually made a video late last night, but so many changes happened today, and then when Christine called me and set me straight on some of the misinformation I had gleaned, I decided to scrap that video and make this whole new one. So this is much better. Here are some tips to be successful. Obviously, accurate listings. Make sure you have your items in stock, because if you sell somebody something and you cancel it, and eBay sees you canceled it because you didn't have it in stock, that's a defect. Always upload your shipping, and if the item is over $250, you must require a signature. Answer your emails as soon as possible, and send a thank you note if possible. That's what I was talking about earlier, that I'm thinking about sending a note with all my sales saying thank you. If you have any problem, just contact me. I'm there for you. You know? And eBay likes this. This is good. We don't want conflict with the buyers. Another tip is accept returns. If you are a top-rated seller, you're accepting returns now anyway. One thing that I'm a little not too fond of is they would like you to pay return shipping. Me, I feel a seller should only pay return shipping if the seller screws up. Like if I send somebody a Chevy hubcap and they really had paid for a Ford hubcap, well, that's my fault and I should suck that up. But if I send somebody one hubcap and they made a mistake and they thought they were getting 4, I don't think that's my fault. But that's just me. They also are big on hassle-free returns, like I told you. But at this point, I strongly suggest you guys wait until they fine-tune it. They also say to keep checking your seller dashboard to see if you get any defects or low stars. They do not like those low stars, and they're including 3 as a low star as item not as described. All right. Let me do a really quick rehash now because I know there's a lot of material here. I know there's going to be a lot of questions. So, I don't usually get into banter on the comment section, but I will try to later tonight when I get home, in case you have any specific questions you want answered. Very quickly, let's redo everything here. Number one, eBay is instituting two very, very important changes. One is the holiday returns option, which will be from November 1st to January 31st inclusive. If you opt in during that period, you must take returns for the entire period, no questions asked. They think it's going to drive a lot of people to make more purchases. Me, I'm not sure if it will, but hell, if it does, I'm for it. I don't have any problems with that. But what's really important is the defect rate. Let me go over it one more time because it's super important. The following things, any one of the following things are an automatic defect. Getting a 1, 2, or 3 stars as item is described. Getting a negative or neutral feedback. Getting a return for SNAD, significantly not as described. Getting a 1 star for shipping time. Having an eBay money back guarantee or PayPal protection case opened for SNAD. And lastly, seller cancel transactions, meaning you cancel, a buyer wins your item and you cancel it and you tell the guy you don't have it in stock. The only acceptable cancellations are if a buyer initiates it. If a buyer says, like, my 3-year-old son bid on that item, will you cancel it? And you cancel it, that's acceptable. Okay? Or in my case, if he says, I bid 1 hubcap, I thought I was getting 4. But as long as he does not open a complaint against any of you, you'll be fine. Alright? Again, the time frame, lastly, you'll be able to view your progress. You'll get a preview on April 16th. On May 1st, the new rules kick in, meaning anything you sell starting May 1st is open to the defect clause. August 20th, you get your first report card / evaluation. Find out how you're doing. And September 1st, you'll get your first bill, which will be reflective of how you're doing and whether you kept your 20% top-rated seller status. I asked Christine, point blank, I said, is eBay doing this to weed out a lot of top-rated sellers who are getting the 20% discount? She said, absolutely not. I said, Christine, I said, do you understand why I have to ask you this and why there are some people that might think it? She said, oh, absolutely. But that is not the reason they're doing it. In fact, like Cindy said, the threshold has actually been raised. Through the old system, we had 4 things that could bang us per transaction, that damn DSL console. Now, no matter how many defects you get per item, it only counts as 1. But still, I think we need to keep an eye on cases that are going to be opened, because that's going to count as a defect. That's my only worry or concern with this new system, is that the cases that are opened are going to count as defects. If any of you guys have comments, and I know you do, please comment below. I really want to hear a lot from you guys tonight. I want to hear what you like about the new policy, what you don't like about the new policy. Can you figure out any way that eBay could fine-tune the hassle returns policy so that it's not an automatic defect? You know? I mean, it sounds like a real easy policy to use, but who wants to get an automatic defect? I know I sure don't. But again, using me as an example, guys, and you can check my feedback. I'm eBay Motors seller Hubcap Joe's. I've had 1 negative all year, I've had 2 neutrals all year, and I've had 1 item not received case all year. And let me talk about that really quick. I'm glad I just thought of that, because Christine told me about this and I didn't even know it. Very quickly. Last December, I sold a set of hubcaps to a guy. Maybe around a week later, he contacts me and he opens an item not received case. And he says, I never got my caps. So I checked the tracking number and it showed they were delivered. The UPS tracking number. So what happened is I tracked them through UPS, and dopey UPS delivered them to the wrong address. Totally their fault. So I contacted the guy. I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I had no idea. I said, I've contacted UPS. They're going to pick the hubs up tomorrow. They'll be at your door by tomorrow night. And they were. The guy writes back to me the next day and says, Joe, thank you so much for all your effort. The hubcaps came. They look great. I will definitely buy from you again. I put the matter out of my head. Do you know that Christine told me under the new rules that would count as a defect? Even though I did nothing wrong, I shipped the caps out the same day the guy paid, uploaded the tracking number, UPS took them, dopey UPS brought them to the wrong guy's house, but once I found out they did that, I jumped back in, I tracked them, I had UPS bring them to the guy's house, I apologized. The guy was the nicest guy in the world. He thanked me, he said he'll do business with me again, and eBay would have given me a defect for that. Guys, I'm Crazy New York Driver, and you're not. On that note, I'm going to leave you. The time now is, oh, beautiful, 7:10 p.m. I'll never get this thing up tonight. I got to go home yet. Thanks for watching. Talk, comments. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. And I'll see you next Friday right here on the Crazy New York Driver Show.